Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Integrating MSO and Studio5D Planner. Now, if you happen to experience any technical issues during the presentation today, please use the raise hand button on the upper left-hand corner of your screen, and we'll attempt to assist you. We will allocate time after the presentation for a question and answer session, so if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please enter them into the chat box on your screen, and we'll do our best to address these then. Now to introduce our presenter for today, Mick Rogers. Mick is one of our Planning and Optimization Solutions Managers. He specialises in the development of CAE Mining's new generation of underground planning solutions. Mick began his professional career as a mining engineer and has worked in both IT support and more recently as a software developer. Mick has worked extensively with Studio5D Planner for the past 13 years. Take it away, Mick.
Thanks, Eloise, and welcome everyone to this webinar. Thank you for attending. So just a reminder of why we're here, just a quick look at that slide. But more importantly, what are we actually going to talk about today? So I'm going to start off by assuming that you have some familiarity with Studio5D Planner and with MSO, but we will take a brief look at what they are and what they do. So I guess the great thing about MSO is that it's a really good tool for creating fast and reliably reproducible stope shapes. And they're not the sort of stope shapes that you'd give to your drill and blast engineer, but they're excellent strategic designs, and you can do accurate comparisons between different design parameters because you get repeatable results. Studio5D Planner is a great tool for designing and, more importantly, turning your designs into a schedule for use in EPS, which is our Gantt chart scheduler. So how do you combine these two tools so that you can get the results of your MSO runs into your schedule? And that's what we want to talk about today. So a brief reminder of what we can do in Studio5D Planner. There are many design tools to enable you to lay out development and different stoping activities, and manipulation tools for turning your designs into scheduling activities. There are four main design types for creating activities from designs data or CAD data, and those are the fixed cross sections where we apply a shape to a centerline string, the outlines where we project a closed shape a set distance to create solids, complex solids where you can join groups of strings together to create your own solids, and the newest design type is imported wireframes, where you can take wireframes from an external source and use these to create activities. Now, this feature was actually specifically created in order to allow us to take in the MSO data, but it's not restricted to MSO. It doesn't care where you bring in the wireframes from. And of course, if you're a user, you'd be familiar with, we also have defined and derived activities, but we won't be sort of looking at those today. So the important thing to remember is the design definition. So the design definitions are essentially the rules for processing your CAD data to turn them into activities. And so we'll have a look at how we use the design definitions to create activities from our MSO stope shapes. Of course, then we would sequence those activities so we can tell EPS the fixed rules for what has to happen in which order, and then we can export all those activities and the sequence to EPS for scheduling. So a quick overview of MSO. Well, it's a great tool for creating optimized stope shapes from a block model. You give it a set of parameters to create a framework, and MSO will return you some stope shapes. sounds simple when you say it fast, but it's an excellent tool. So how do we go about integrating them together? So the first step is to actually do your MSO runs, tweak your parameters until you're happy with the output of a set of stope shapes that you want to use in your schedule. Now, sometimes, depending on the layout of the distribution of grade in your block model, you'll occasionally get MSO shapes that you might consider too far removed from your main area of mining to be included in your schedule. And so we need to kind of post-process those shapes and choose the ones that we want to include in our schedule. We obviously need to create some designs for development and how we're going to access those stopes. And then what we're going to do is use the imported wireframe design type to create activities from those stopes. We'll apply the design definition, create the activities, and one of the slight differences with imported wireframes is that you have to supply a unique identifier so that Studio5D Planner can tell which triangles you want to use to create an activity. Now, this is quite easy with MSO because there's a stope field on the output from MSO, and we can just use that as the unique identifier. Then you'd sequence those stopes and development and any other mining activities you've got, and you'll be ready to export to EPS. So that's probably enough talking about how you might go about it. Let's have a look what we might do. So I'm not going to actually run MSO today, but if you'd like to find out more about that, you'll be able to access webinars on MSO from our website. But here's the output of an MSO run that I've done, and I'm reasonably happy with the results. I'll spin that around. I'll stop spinning so that via the webinar you have a chance for your screen to update. So I'm looking kind of a long strike there. I'll go back to pretty much a long section view. And you can see I've got some really good continuity in a lot of places, but I've also got a couple of strange outliers that I probably won't want to use. Now, the other thing that MSO gives us is a set of strings, and I'll zoom in so that we can maybe have a better look there. And MSO will give us a floor string around each of those, and I'll just make the wireframes.
Hi Mick, sorry to interrupt. Sorry Mick, just want to make sure you shared your screen there.
Yeah, that would help, wouldn't it? Sorry.
No worries.
Okay, so I'll just zoom back out a bit and go back to what I was trying to tell you previously. Now it might make a bit more sense. So you should see on your screen now the long section view that I promised. And you see I've got a whole bunch of, in this case, green wireframes that are the output of MSO. And I'll just zoom in here, and I'll turn the walls and floor strings from MSO back on, so you can see I can actually highlight them, perhaps make them a little bit easier to see via the webinar session. So MSO gives me a string at either end of each stope shape, and then a floor string. I can just get the right one to select at the base of each stope, and that's what I'm going to use to clean up those shapes. So if I just zoom out again, now what I'm going to do is actually, first off, I'm going to get rid of the wall strings. So just turn off my wireframes for a sec. And filter those, and I happen to know that they're colour 1, and we'll just get rid of all those. So I don't want them for what I want to achieve. So now what I've got is a floor string for every stope. And what I can do is, I want to get rid of that one. I can go and delete the strings for any of the stopes that I don't want to keep. And then what I've got is a macro that will match up on the Studio5D parameter, attribute, and delete the wireframes that I don't want to see. And we can make that available if you want some help with that wireframe, with that macro to do that. So I'm just going to get rid of those as well, and through the magic of preparation, here are a little bit of luck. There we go. Here are my cleaned up wireframes. So you can see I've got rid of it. There was a small area down below, and I've also trimmed across the top because I haven't loaded it up, but there's a topography there, and I want to stay away from the surface. But which ones you want to include is purely up to you. So now I would go off and do some designing, and again we use the magic of the webinar to add some designs in. And so you can see I've got a rather elaborate design, and I'll spin it around real quick so you can't critique it too much, but I've got some in purple if it shows up on the webinar decline string, and some red return air risers and various access developments. So I've already processed those fixed cross sections to create my activities. So I'm going to go into project setup now and add in the adjusted MSO shapes. So now I've created those that new design, and the workflow is telling me that I need to apply the design definitions. And because I'd previously done this when I was setting up the demo, it's warning me that there were already some shapes there, and it's going to overwrite them and clean out some fields on the wireframes. And not sure if that worked then. I'm just going to double check that. There we go, that's what I was after. So this is where the wireframe tool says, okay, so you've given me a wireframe file, and I need you to tell me how to identify activities out of that. And so in this case, I'm going to use the scope attribute, which was output by MSO. If I was importing wireframes from a different source, then I just need to have an attribute on them that identifies the activities. So I'll go ahead and do that. Going to do a bit of pre-processing and creates sort of a dummy wall by slicing up the wireframe, and a preliminary point that will be used as the activity point. Just a about done. Okay, and the workflow will update in a second, and what I need to do next is to actually check these design definitions. Now what I'm going to do, I've got two design definitions here, and I'm just going to go back into that long section view. And you can see it's displaying the the dummy walls that it's created by slicing the wireframes. And I could just have all of my MSO wireframes have the same design definition, or I can create as many as I would like them to have. You don't need to have one for each stope, as you would with a complex solid, but you can choose to have some. And I've got two design definitions here, just so that we can see how that might work. And what I'm going to do is just alternately, every alternate level, I'm going to apply a different design definition. I'll just drag a fence around those. So now if I just move that dialog out of the way, you can see I've got alternate green and blue design definitions, and that'll just give us a good visual representation of where each level is and what the design definition is. But equally, I could apply a different design definition in a different area, because I might have a different stoping methodology or a different piece of equipment. Any reason why you might want to apply a different rate, or just be able to identify different stopes. So I need to now apply those to the design. It's going to, it has to remove the ones because I've already done this once when I was preparing for the demo. Okay, so now that we've applied the design definitions, we just need to update the imported wireframes, and that's just going to take the information from those pseudo walls and update the colours and the attributes on the solids and combine those into the activity solids and generate the IDs for the points. Now we have our MSO shapes turned into activity. And what I can do is load the walls and the points for those. And if I just make those wireframes a little bit transparent. And if we zoom in there, you'll be able to see, hopefully. I might try it in the design window. You can see the activity point here, and if I select that wall string, it'll hopefully stand out enough so you can see that via the webinar. So now we have activity points and walls and solids. Now we can evaluate the whole design. We can add our sequencing, and then we can export to EPS and these will show up in our EPS schedule. So here's one I prepared earlier. Bear with me 1 second while it loads up. And here's my schedule, and it's a little difficult on 2 monitors, but I can actually animate now, and I'm actually animating the sequence. And so that's it, and it's actually quite easy for us to create a schedule from our MSO shapes. So that's pretty much the demonstration, and I'm just going to unshare and get back to the presentation because I've just got a couple more slides. Okay, so where do we go from here? There's a new release of Studio5D Planner coming out hopefully at the end of this month, and I have to have a webinar highlighting some of those key features and how they look. We've updated the Studio component in 5D Planner to the latest one, so you're also welcome to check out Robin Hollins's What's Coming in Studio webinar. And but for the particular 5D Planner things that we're interested in, there have been some quite significant speed ups in the application of design definitions. So the process of applying the design definitions to your design strings is now much faster. We've got a new attribute type, which is allows you to apply an attribute by using filters, and the filter construction is similar to the filters that we use in the interrogation setup. So you can use a design type, you can use a description from a design definition, or you can create your own custom filter, and that allows you to automatically apply design attributes to your activities. We've begun a process of streamlining the processing of activities. So in MR23, the fixed cross-sections, outlines and derived activities will now process with much fewer button clicks. So what we've done is we've looked at removing the cases where essentially 5D Planner just asks you to click OK to confirm that you actually wanted to do something. And in the following version, which is slated for the end of July, we'll have done some of the same streamlining processes to the imported wireframes and the complex solids. So what about MSO? So the version, we implement the version 1 engine currently in 5D Planner and Studio 3. There already is a V2 engine available, and our implementation of that, which we call UGSO, should be available at the end of June this year. We've had it up and running, and we're just not quite happy with the way it works at the moment, and we're just tweaking the UI a bit to make that a little bit more intuitive and a bit more graphical to lead you through the process of using MSO. And that is essentially it. Back to you, Eloise.
Thanks very much for that, Mick. Okay, so now it's time for our question and answer session. Okay, so one question we have here, is the macro within Studio5D Planner or your own external macro?
So it's a custom macro that we've written in hopefully the next version, but I can't promise it. I'm going to add in some functionality to effectively do the same sort of thing wholly within 5D Planner, so we'll make that process a lot easier to use. But we can supply that macro if you want to indicate on your survey after the webinar that you'd like access to that macro. It's quite a simple macro. We could supply that to anyone that's interested.
Thanks for that, Mick. The next question, what are the major differences between MSO version 1 and UGSO?
Okay, so I guess there's actually two parts to that question. So the difference between the MSO engine version 1 and version 2 is that version 2 has a lot more parameters that you can flex. So you can have irregular frameworks. So you can have, what that means is in the example that we did here, where it might represent, say, a benching or sublevel open stoping operation. MSO version 2 allows you to specify irregular sublevels and also irregular section spacing. So we could mimic a primary and secondary stoping operation where we might have smaller primary stopes that we're going to cement or paste fill and larger secondary stopes. And there also is the concept of instead of actually specifying what would be a level spacing and a section spacing in a vertical usage, we can actually just specify individual quads for those shapes. So there's a lot more parameters that you can flex. You can also ask MSO to float the sublevel starting point, so that you might be happy that I need, say, 15 metre sublevels, but of course you can move your starting point of where the first level is and potentially get a different result. So you can ask it to try different starting points and report back the best one. The difference between the implementation, so the implementation that we currently have in 5D Planner and Studio3 is just via a dialogue you'd be familiar with in the application, and passing off to the engine, and it returns the wireframes, and we can load them into the design window or the VR window. UGSO is going to be on our new Summit platform, which you'll be hearing a lot more about in the near future if you haven't heard about it yet. I'll try and keep it brief, but what Summit is a cloud-based solution, and what that does is it effectively gives us access to unlimited processing power and storage space, and you access Summit via any web browser, except for currently not on your iPhone, but you can do it on any computer. You can do it on a Macintosh, Windows, using Firefox, Chrome, Internet Explorer, and the processing is done in a secure data center, and the web page is just how you interact with the processing power, I guess, in the background. And what we're able to do then is do a lot of processing in parallel. So I can set up a variety of scenarios. For instance, in this case, different level spacings, different section spacings, whether I want full stopes or half stopes or a combination or a bit of each. Generate a large number of scenarios and run them all in parallel and return the results in the same, or in fact probably less time, then you could run them on your desktop. And then you'll be able to compare those results. There's a lot of charting tools, a visualization tool, so you can see the difference in where are the stope shapes that are different between different scenarios, and then you can download the scenario that you choose to take forward. So I guess that's. I've tried to keep that brief. I probably spoke for quite a few minutes there, but there will be a lot more information available with that going forward. And in fact, I'm hosting a UGSO webinar in June, I believe it is. And at that stage, we should be able to actually show you what it does rather than just talk about it.
That's great. Thanks very much for that, Mick. We might have to wrap things up there. So this marks the end of today's webinar. Thank you all very much for attending. We hope you found the content presented valuable. If you did submit a question that we were unable to address, please rest assured that these have been recorded, so we'll touch base with you afterwards to follow up. You will soon be redirected to an online feedback form. It will take no more than a few minutes to complete, so if you do have the chance, we'd really appreciate your feedback on how today's webinar went. We'll also be sending out a follow-up email to all of our attendees, which will provide you with a recording of the webinar as well as the necessary details to contact us should you have any additional queries. We look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you all once again for attending today's webinar, and thanks very much, Mick Rogers.
Thank you.